This podcast is brought to you by BuyEmergencyFoods.com. Every time I go to the Legacy site, I learn a little bit more about their food, and I continue to be impressed. For example, I recently learned that all of their meals are vegetarian, which I think is a really good idea because there are so many people that have food allergies and food sensitivities that by making their meals vegetarian, and half of those are gluten-free. So it makes it much easier for you to provide good-tasting, high-quality meals for your family. And then they offer the freeze-dried meats. Now, this is real meat, not TVP. It's not textured vegetable protein. This is real meat, and it's freeze-dried, and you can use it to put it back into these dishes to add protein, or you can use it to make other dishes. I think this presents a very flexible food storage plan that you can use and roll it right into your current plan that you're putting together. That's BuyEmergencyFoods.com. Howdy, folks. Rob Hannes here of the Preparedness Podcast, the podcast that brings you the best in preparedness information. If you're looking online, you can find us at thepreparednesspodcast.com. You can reach us through the contact form right on the website, or you can email me directly at rob@prepcast.info. Today we're going to be talking about the basic 72-hour survival kit. Recently, I've had a few listeners contact me about putting together various kits, specifically a 72-hour kit. They didn't ask about the 72-hour kit, but they were asking about beginner kits. How should beginners begin? Where should they start? Also, recently I had a conversation with a family member who began putting together an emergency kit for her family and had some questions about that, and she had referenced a list that she had gotten off the site or one of my lists from someplace, and she expressed some concern about how it seemed a little bit overly complicated. I didn't have the opportunity to see the list that she was talking about, but what I thought I would do is, because we have listeners to the podcast that are just starting out, they haven't been prepping too long, they've just started to realize that they need to be prepared, as well as the more experienced preppers. So what I try to do is I try to balance out some basic stuff with some more advanced stuff. Although, quite honestly, prepping is never really advanced. It's more about better organization and better logistics and things like that. So before that, I just want to do some reminders. We have the Preparedness Podcast mini guide on EMP survival out at Amazon.com. If you go to Amazon and search for Preparedness Podcast, you'll find it. Also, the Preparedness Capability Checklist is, I'm just trying to finish that up, trying to get it out so that we can get it to the publisher and start that cycle. When you're on the website, checking out the Prepper News Watch articles that I put out there, which is basically a summary or a set of links to various news articles for the day or the previous day as the news cycle goes. Check out the newsletter sign up, which is a newsletter and a weekly tips. The weekly tip is a tip that comes out about preparedness. Generally allows me to hit a different aspect or dig deeper on some certain topics. And also, last week we started basically what I'm calling the newsletter, which is a summary of all the week's articles and posts that came out on the website are also being sent to everybody. So look for that when you're on the site. Okay, so we are now in the second month of 2013, February, as they call it. And as you probably know by now, I was only able to put out one podcast last week. That wasn't really my intention. It was just a series of events that prevented me from actually doing any more. So we'll continue with this week, and my goal is to put out 3 a week, and we're going to try to do that. The next podcast that we have coming up is going to be listener feedback. There has been quite a bit of comments and questions in general, and I thought I'd take some time to address that, because if one person has that question or comment. There are probably others that feel the same, and I thought it would be a good time to do some listener feedback and kind of go over some of the stuff that you guys have been sending in. So that'll be the next show, episode 165. And I don't know if you noticed it, but did you see what I did there? I actually mentioned the number and the upcoming podcast, which is something I generally don't do, but I'm pretty confident that we're going to be able to get this one out next. So look for that. All right, so the basic 72-hour kit. Now, not too long ago, back in episode 122, we had a Back to Basics show that talked about the basic survival kit. And this is very similar to a basic survival kit. I mean, it is a basic survival kit. However, it has a very specific purpose. Now, your general survival kit is coming from the precept that you may be anywhere, and specifically probably out in the wilderness when you get stranded or are in a survival situation, and that kit is more designed for that sort of situation. Now, the concept of the 72-hour kit, it's been around for a long time. I mean, it's decades I've been hearing about 72-hour kits or the 3-day kit. 72 hours is 3 days, by the way. So the purpose of this is to provide a small amount of supplies that would allow you to survive for 3 days without any support from the outside, so no outside help. So if you were stranded in a car, or if you had no utilities at home, or a tornado or an earthquake or something happened and there was no help coming, your 72-hour kit is designed to help you survive for 3 days. Now, in truth, 72 hours or 3 days is woefully inadequate for the amount of time that you would need to be self-reliant. Recent disasters have shown us that when there's a significant enough disruption to the normal infrastructure, like utilities and the availability of food and water and fuel, then you're very likely to need to provide for yourself for far longer than 72 hours. We only need to look back not that long ago at some recent disasters to see examples of this. Hurricane Katrina, now that was in 2005, so that was a ways ago. However, we had the big earthquake in Haiti, that was 2010. We had the Japan tsunami and all the damage and collateral damage it had with the nuclear reactor and stuff, that was 2011. We had the Joplin tornado in 2011, and we just recently saw Hurricane Sandy hit the New York, New Jersey area just a few months ago. Now, granted, these are large-scale disasters, but they illustrate that they do happen. Additionally, there are even more smaller disasters, small-scale, medium-scale, that happen on a more frequent basis than these large-scale disasters. So the 72-hour kit is probably fairly inadequate for most disasters and emergencies. However, it is a good place to start building your preps. Also, because there are so many reputable organizations such as the Red Cross, FEMA, federal government, etc., they recommend having a 72-hour kit. This is probably a good way to get your non-prepping friends and family to agree to have a minimal amount of supplies. So if they say, oh, no, you're crazy, we're not going to prepare for that, that's just goofy. Well, you can point to these organizations and say, well, look, if you don't believe me, take a look at these people. Look at the Red Cross. Look at FEMA. Look at, Homeland Security or whatever you want to point to. They say you should have a kit for 72 hours. And that may be at least some way that you can get to them to have at least some preparations. Now, some of the things that a 72-hour kit is not is a bug-out bag or a get-home bag. It's simply a kit that gives you the basics for a short period of time. A bug-out bag is geared more for an indefinite period of time away from home. So, like when you evacuate or when you're bugging out of town. A get-home bag is the opposite. It's geared to provide you with whatever you would need in order to get back home, typically from places like where you work and stuff like that. So the 72-hour kit is none of these. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't a lot of similarities between the 72-hour kit and these bags, but you could combine them into one. Now I've done that with my main fast pack, and we'll get into this more when I talk about my fast pack concept in a future podcast. But in general, my main bag serves as my bug out bag, my get home bag, and my 72-hour kit. I can get away with this because I don't need anything extra for getting home. So my get home bag doesn't have to have extra stuff. For example, I don't need comfortable shoes to carry because I wear comfortable shoes and I wear durable clothes every day to work. If you're somebody who wears high heels or dress shoes, nice business clothes and stuff, you're going to need a bag that contains just shoes and clothes that you can change into so that you can walk home and not have your shoes fall off and have some sort of durability with your clothes and stuff. It's like you don't want to wear your business clothes when you go hiking in the mountains or in the forest. It's the same concept. You would want better clothes in order to get home. So I don't have that extra burden to worry about, so I don't have to worry about having my get home bag take care of those things. Additionally, in order to take my 72-hour kit and convert it into a bug out bag, what I've done is I've just added more things. So it's actually a bigger bag and it's very heavy. But that's the choice I've made because I didn't want to have 3 different bags. I wanted to have one bag that took care of all of this. And of course, that's perfectly acceptable if that's what you choose to do. Now, the downsides, as we've talked about, is that realistically, 72 hours / 3 days is too short of a period to cover most disasters where you would need it. But it is and does serve as the core, or should be the core supplies. So the reason we stay with the 72-hour kit is because 3 days is about as much as you're going to be able to carry. In other words, the average person can carry about 3 days worth of supplies and gear on their back. Now, this doesn't include the elderly and children who can carry less, but in general, that's kind of why we look at it this way, and that's why I think the 72-hour kit remains the mainstay of survivalism, is because that's about as much as you can expect to carry. This is a really good opportunity to mention the rule of 3. If you're not aware of what the rule of 3 is, this is a concept that you should embed into all of your preparedness plans. And what the rule of 3 states is that you should have 3 ways of doing everything. In other words, have your primary method and 2 backups, or your primary method, a backup, and a backup to your backup. This gives you 3 different methods of accomplishing the same task. For example, fire. You need to have 3 different ways of starting fire because fire is so important, as is most things in your survival kits. You're carrying them or putting them in your survival kits or your prep bags or your go bags or whatever because it's important. It's an item that you need to survive. If you don't need it to survive, then you should probably really consider whether or not you need it. So if it fulfills a vital task like starting fire, then you need to be able to do that in at least 3 different ways. Now, the first thing that you need to consider is what you're going to pack your kit in. And this really depends on what your plan is, what your goal is. Ideally, it should be in a backpack or some sort of bag that you can carry on your back or carry comfortably in case you have to walk out of a situation. If, for example, your car dies and you still need to evacuate, then at least you can more conveniently carry the supplies on your back. Now, this doesn't mean it has to be in a backpack. It's just that typically that's what people choose because it's convenient. You could choose a tote bin or a duffel bag or a cardboard box, though I wouldn't think the cardboard box would actually be all that of a good choice. But really, if you're on a tight budget and that's what you have, then that's what you have to go with. The point is that your kit should be easy to carry, easy to find, and in general, you want to be able to just pick it up and go. So if your plan is to pick it up and stick it in the car and go, then, that's your plan. Now, that doesn't mean that your 72-hour kit is only for evacuations. It is also for home use. In fact, it's most likely where you're going to be using is at home. It's just that the backpack makes it more convenient to carry if you have to. But these supplies are typically your go-to emergency supplies or your go-to disaster supplies. So make sure you store them in a very convenient location. You don't want to stick them in the back of a closet under 50 pounds of old bowling balls or something like that. Now, every person in your family needs to have a kit, including little kids. Now, the little kids can't carry all that much weight, so you probably want to limit them to just a few items like some food, a little water, maybe a jacket and a flashlight, and whatever comfort items they need. But they should still be able to carry some of their own things. So what do we put in our kits? Well, I think we should start with water. Water is one of the most important assets because without it, we become dehydrated very quickly. And even though you can probably go 3-4 days without water, it's not a very comfortable experience. And so having water is probably one of the top functions of your kit. You need 1 gallon per person per day. Now, you might not drink 1 gallon per day now. Although if you added up all the pop and all the Coke and all the Red Bulls and all the tea and all the water you drink, you may very well get closer to 1 gallon than you think. But if you're walking or hiking or doing hard labor, you're going to need the extra water. Not to mention probably reconstituting some foods and stuff and cooking and stuff like that, and probably some minimal washing up, at least 1 gallon of water. Now, that means that every person needs to have 3 gallons of water for the 72 hours. It's very difficult to carry these 3 gallons of water because every gallon of water weighs 8 pounds. So 3 gallons is 24 pounds right there, plus the containers that are carrying. So you're looking at 25, 26, maybe even as much as 28 pounds just in water, and you haven't even packed anything else yet. Today we have a much more efficient way of carrying water than we used to. Used to be canteens or bottles or Nalgene bottles or something. Today we have the water bladder systems, much like the Camelback, and a lot of these are in backpacks, so you can get a backpack for your 72-hour kit, and just make sure you get one that has a water bladder. That will help carry some of the water. Now, a lot of these max out about 100 ounces, which is about 3 quarts. So you're still going to need another couple of gallons someplace else, which isn't really terrible because you don't want to carry all your water one place because, again, it's heavy. But also, if one of those containers rips or breaks or fails, and you won't be losing all your water at once. So some of the ways you can carry your water include the water bladder. You can use old pop bottles, the 2-liter pop bottles. They have water containers, the hard plastic water containers with handles. You can get a carrier for smaller pop bottles. I have I think it's an old Mortar military bag. It's got 5 slots, and I took 20-ounce soda bottles, and I washed them out really well. And then I stuck water in them, and I can get 5 of those in this pack, and it makes it fairly convenient, and that allows me to actually distribute the water to, I've got 5 people in my family, so it's easier to distribute water because I got all these little miniature bottles. So you can be creative. I just would not recommend using the soft plastic like what milk comes in, because that plastic is designed to biodegrade and break down relatively quickly, and you're going to find that you'll probably have leaking water within months, maybe 6 to 9 months, those will start to break down. Other things that you want to include for water include a water filter and or some chemical tablets for sterilization, some metal containers to do some boiling, and probably a metal drinking cup. All this stuff is, what you're going to need. And in here you have your 3 backups. You've got water, you've got a water filter, you've got chemical tablets, you could even do boiling. So that would be like 4 levels of water preps right there. Next, you're going to need some form of shelter. Now, you can consider your clothing to be your first layer of shelter. So if you have a good set of boots and a good jacket, hat, gloves, You have some good rain gear. All that can provide protection from the elements, and that would be your first level. But at some point, you're going to want to, relax and get out of the rain or the snow or the sun or whatever it may be, and that's going to require probably a tent. That would be great. If you don't have a small tent, you can always use a tarp, and I would practice different ways that you can put a shelter together with that tarp. But also, you're going to need some sort of sleeping bag or a blanket, and I would throw in a pillowcase because you can always take almost anything soft, so extra clothes or a jacket or something like that. You can stuff it in that pillowcase and use it as a pillow. Also, a pillowcase is very handy in general. You can use it to gather things. You can use it to strain water. It has multiple uses. The next thing on the list I have here is fire. As mentioned in the example, you need 3 ways of starting fire. For example, waterproof matches, butane lighter, flint and steel. There are so many different ways of starting fire that you shouldn't have any issue finding 3 different ways. You should also have some tinder. I would make sure you had enough tinder to start 9 fires. That's 3 fires a day for the 3 days, and make sure it's the type of tinder that will start wood even if it's wet, because when you need fire, you need fire. You don't want to be fumbling around trying to get it started when you got frozen fingers and you're shaking. If you're on a budget, one of the things you can do is you can take dryer lint, and you can either use it as is, but it works even better if you were to take something like Vaseline or petroleum jelly, and you can. It's dirty. You're going to get your hands all greasy, but basically you smash and you mix the dryer lint with the petroleum jelly, and what happens is you have a very excellent tinder that is virtually no cost to make. You'll want to have some first aid supplies. This can be a well-stocked kit that you buy or stuff that you put together, but you're going to want to have things like gauze pads, gauze rolls, tape, that self-adhering wrap. That's very good. Over-the-counter medicines, antibiotic, ointment, scissors, tweezers, sunscreen, bug repellent, petroleum jelly, Gatorade mix. Now you're probably thinking, why Gatorade mix? Well, what it does is it replaces electrolytes. So if you're having to do hard labor, or let's say you're dehydrated for whatever reason, you're going to need to replace those electrolytes. And sometimes it's just easier to just take a packet of Gatorade mix and mix it with your water and drink it. You're going to need any prescription medicines that you need to take. You should have some of those available in your kit. Now, there's probably a lot of other items that I can mention here. I'm not trying to be very detailed in a lot of these, like sub-kits. Like a first aid is a sub-kit. That's a whole nother show, quite honestly. And I think we actually have done a podcast on, I don't know the number of it, but I did that with Mike several years ago, and that's a pretty good one. So look that one up. You're going to want to have some food and cooking. Definitely some food. You can probably get around the need to cook if all your food is ready to eat. Shelf-stable, non-perishable food, stuff like protein bars, energy bars, MREs, freeze-dried meals, jerky, packaged soups. Now, your freeze-dried meals, you may want to, you probably need to mix some water with that. So boiling some water is probably a necessity. That means you're going to have some sort of metal cup or a small pot. You probably need a spoon. And quite honestly, you would not be going too far if you could pack a small metal folding stove, something that allows you to burn a variety of foods, whether it's twigs or leaves or whatever, because chances are you're going to want to cook something, even if it's something you came across. One item to pack, even if you don't have canned food, I would include a can opener, because you may come across canned food, or you may get canned food as part of a care package or something. So always include a can opener. You need to have some form of light in your kit. If you only pack one light item, I would suggest making it a headlamp. Otherwise, I would have a headlamp and a flashlight, both. I would make both of them LED, because the LED flashlights are much easier on batteries, so the batteries last a longer time. Store extra batteries nonetheless. Probably some candles. You need to be careful, though, because it is an open flame, but they can be very efficient for providing light. And some of these glow sticks, the glow sticks are very safe. You should keep some of these by your bed if you're in an earthquake country or tornado country, so that if there's a disaster, you can reach for these and crack these to get the light going. There's no spark, there's no heat. You don't have to worry about gas and potential explosions because of that. So those are very good to have as well. The next category I have is navigation, signaling, and communications. And primary among this is your cell phone. Your cell phone can be a lifeline to emergency services, loved ones, getting information. If you have a smartphone, you have access to the internet. You can send out text. Don't forget, though, your cell phone is completely reliant on the battery power that it has. So you need either external batteries, spare batteries. I would include charging cords. If you could find or have some sort of solar or hand crank charger to charge your phone, that would be highly useful, because then you could keep your phone charged. And as we saw in recent disasters, most recently Hurricane Sandy, the cell phone was people's lifeline to the outside world. That's how they found information. That's how they were able to communicate with one another. And the biggest problem they had was keeping their cell phones charged. Additionally, you should have a compass and a set of maps for your area. Not only should you have them, but you should be familiar with these maps, and you should have at least a rudimentary knowledge on how to use a compass. You should have a whistle, especially for children. Your children should all have a whistle. What we did one time, we went camping. The children that were with us were a little bit skittish about being out in the wilds, and so what I did is I brought a whistle for each of them, and I told them that if they wear the whistle and if they ever were scared, they could blow the whistle, and then a parent or an adult would be right there to help them, and that made them much more comfortable, and that allowed them to enjoy themselves because they had that whistle with them. I imagine you could achieve the same sort of result, perhaps, by letting the child know that even though there was a disaster and things are very chaotic and things are changing and they might be scared, if they ever had a problem or were too scared, they could blow on their whistle, and that would alert you that they needed help. But I think adults should have their own whistle as well. It can be a very efficient form of communications, especially if there's an emergency or danger. I think the whistle is vastly underrated as a communication device. You should have a signal mirror and some flares. Now, these can be road flares, or you can actually go out and buy the little flare gun, especially if you travel a lot. You may want to, throw your 72-hour kit in your trunk when you go traveling. That way you have some supplies. The signal mirror also, backs as a real mirror, so you can look at eyes and get things out of your eyes and stuff like that. You should have an AM and FM radio and a NOAA weather radio. The weather radio system is designed now to pass along emergency information when needed. So you may find that you get more information from the weather radio than you do the AM or FM radio. Rounding out this section of navigation, signaling, and communications is an emergency contact list. You need to have printed or written out or typed up on paper in your purse or wallet, something that's on you, a list of all your emergency contacts, everybody you would want to get a hold of, including at least one out-of-state contact, because many times you're unable to call in the local area that's been affected by the disaster, but you will be able to call out of state long distance. And if you have designated one person as the out-of-state contact, you can use them as a human bulletin board so that you can call them and leave messages, and they'll be able to relay those messages to other people that call in. And it's not very efficient because you're constantly have to call in and checking for messages, but at least you're able to have some form of communications. You're going to need some way to protect yourself in a disaster. Not every disaster brings out the worst in people. Many communities band and rally together when needed, and you don't need this, but in other communities, in other times, you do have criminals and looters that come out and take advantage of other people's misfortune, and so you're going to need to be able to take care of yourself, be able to protect you and your family. Now, if you carry a gun, then your gun should probably be your main form of defense. I would not store your gun or ammunition in your 72-hour kit because I feel that's probably far too unsafe. It's something you're going to have to grab when you need it. But if you don't carry a gun, don't want to carry a gun, or in a state that restricts them, then you can look at things like pepper spray, walking sticks, canes, whatever else is available to you. You're going to have to do the research and find out what your options are and what you're comfortable with. Of course, you're going to want to have some sort of comfort and sanitation. In this category, I would look at putting things like toilet paper, moist towelettes, feminine hygiene, toothbrush, toothpaste, soap, hand sanitizer, a brush or a comb. One possibility, if you want to keep your 72-hour kit in a bucket, then you can use the bucket along with some garbage bags, and that becomes an emergency toilet. An extremely important item to include in your kit: if you wear prescription lenses, contacts, or glasses, you need to have a spare pair of eyeglasses in your kit. Now, these don't have to be the most fashionable. You can use an old pair, maybe an old set of frames, get the lenses updated to your current prescription. Go online and find a cheap set of glasses. If you're going to go that route, what I would suggest, though, is get a pair of glasses that serve as safety glasses. That way you're protecting your eyes and are able to see at the same time. A few items in this category might seem frivolous, but they are actually important for taking care of your hands, and those include nail clippers, a nail file, and some hand lotion. When you're out working and your hands are getting dry and cracked, you want to keep them as moist as possible. Put some lotion on, because when your skin starts to crack, you're inviting bacteria and viruses to get into your body. I mean, that's what your skin does. It protects your body against those things. So you don't want to have your hands cracked, any sort of nails that get ripped or chipped or whatever. You want to take care of them so it's comfortable. You don't want to be dealing with ripped, bloody nails. One thing that has not been a regular part of the 72-hour kit list, but I've started to see more and more probably since the last decade, or the last decade since 9/11, and that is, they call it a dust mask, but I would recommend that you have either an N95 or an N100 mask, at least one per person. Disasters are often filled with debris and dust in the air, and not only can it be difficult to breathe sometimes, but a lot of this stuff can be toxic to your lungs. And so by having one of these, it allows you to be able to breathe the air and not have to worry about all the gunk that you're breathing in. The last section I have here is just a general utility and miscellaneous. We start off with a knife and a multi-tool. Your knife could be part of your multi-tool, though I recommend having a good fixed blade knife, something about 6 inches or so, because that becomes your general utility knife. Now, you should have some cordage, either utility rope, your general basic utility rope you find at the hardware store, or I prefer parachute cord, or sometimes it's called paracord. You can find this at, camping, military surplus places. You can find it online at campingsurvival.com, which, incidentally, if you go to the website, you'll see there's a coupon code that you can use for 5% additional off. But the parachute cord is great because it has an outer sheath that encompasses 7 strands of smaller fibers. And you can cut the parachute cord and pull out these fibers and use these smaller strings for smaller tasks. So you can use the parachute cord as is, which makes it a very strong cordage. You can pull out these fibers, use them independently, but you can still use the sheath when you're done. So, for example, you could use the sheath as bootlaces or shoelaces and still use the inner fibers for other tying tasks. So when you hear people talk about paracord, this is why they like parachute cord so much, because it's extremely versatile. I would put some cash into your survival kit, probably not a lot, maybe $50, $80, maybe $100 worth of cash in smaller bills, 5, 10s, 20s, maybe a few ones, because sometimes you need cash when you go, whether you're buying something or having to make change or buy gas or something. You don't want to be stuck having to buy a few gallons of gas to get out of town, and all they accept is cash, but all you have in your wallet are credit cards. Other things that I think would be useful in your 72-hour kit include paper and pencil, maybe a small notepad and a pencil, work gloves, a small shovel or maybe a garden trowel, a small roll of duct tape, garbage bags, and you should have a copy of your important documents, insurance policies, possibly your ID, access to your bank accounts, and you may want to develop some sort of encryption on these, so maybe you're transposing numbers or something on your bank accounts and passwords so that anybody who finds the bag can't necessarily use the information against you. And I would also include, if you have children, some form of entertainment for the kids, a deck of cards, some coloring books, some books to read. Having children, I know it's important that they stay occupied, either to keep their mind off of something or to keep them busy so that they're not making constant noise or getting into trouble, and that leads to more stress in an already stressful situation. If you have an infant, you're going to need to provide for infant stuff. What my wife and I did is we actually packed separate fast packs for the children when they were infants, and we packed it with whatever they were eating, plus if they were coming up on a stage where they're going to be changing, we would include some of that food. We would include the next size diapers, the next size clothes, and what we did is we would rotate this stuff out. So, for example, if the baby is wearing size 3 diapers, we would pack size 4 in the fast pack, and when they got to size 4, we would take those out of the bag and we would put in size 5, as well as rotating out any formula and food or whatever else we had in there. It was a lot of work, but you know what? We felt so much better knowing that if we had to evacuate in a hurry, we had this stuff with us. Now, luckily, babies aren't babies forever, and you're not going to have a specialized fast pack or a specialized bag for them forever. It's only going to be for the period of time that they have these special needs, infant and special food and baby food and bibs and stuff like that. Typically, I'd say 3 years or less. Every 6 months it goes by, it's seemed to get easier on what we had to pack. And even though my kids are they're not even to their teens yet, it's getting even easier because they eat real food and we can talk to them and they can help out and they can carry some of their own gear and it just becomes easier. But you do need to account for that. Likewise, if you have pets, you're going to need to have supplies for them as well. Leashes, bowls, food, extra water for them because you can't take it out of your supply. So don't forget, you're going to have to put a little kit together for them too. Now, if you go searching for survival kit list or 72-hour kit list on the internet, you're going to find all sorts of lists out there that have some great ideas of what you can put into your kits. Some of the lists, though, seem to list everything, and you need to be aware that if it's a home kit, a kit that you're designed to use strictly at home or something that you can lift into the back of your car or SUV or something, then that's fine. Go ahead and put as much in there as possible. And there's nothing wrong with that because chances are you're going to be needing it at home. However, you do need to have a small enough kit that you can carry on your back so that if you have to evacuate on foot or if all you have time to grab is this bag, then it's not too heavy and you're able to carry it, but yet still have all the stuff you need in order to survive for your 72 hours. This is also a good time to reiterate that when you buy something for your preparedness, it should be a quality item. It doesn't have to be the most expensive item, but don't buy cheap garbage that's going to fail or break the first time you use it. If you ever have to actually rely on this stuff to survive, you're going to make sure that it's at least high enough quality that it's going to do the job that you're going to be using it for. Stay away from the very cheap stuff because you're just going to regret it in the end. And with that, we are at the conclusion of this topic of 72-hour kits on the Preparedness Podcast. If you have any comments or suggestions or questions, please feel free to email me at rob@prepcast.info, or you can go to the show notes on the website, and at the bottom you can leave your question or comment there. If you're on Facebook, you can like us at facebook.com/preparednesspodcast. If you're on Twitter, you can follow us at PrepCast. So until next time, enjoy life and be safe.